You know, there's a wonderful book called What They Don't Teach You in Harvard Business School, Mark McCormack. And the study's been done lots and lots of times, and it's quite extraordinary. You know, they just took the cream of the crop from Harvard, the cream of the people in the US, socioeconomic and intelligence and DNA and all the rest of it, and they just literally split them up into those that had goals and those that didn't. 84% had no goals at all. 13% had fuzzy goals at the back of their head, like a lot of Kiwis do, and 3% had written goals. And they come back 10 years after they've left university, how are they all doing? And the 13% that had fuzzy goals in the back of their head were earning twice as much as the 84%. But what blew them away, and they've repeated the study, is the 3% who had written goals were earning 10 times the other 97% put together. The power of written goals is enormous. And most people in New Zealand don't have that. I challenge people, what are your goals in life? And most people have this fuzzy, you know, I want to be financially independent, you know, on my batch somewhere by the water with, you know, pina colada in my hand and partner at my side and grandkids at my feet and watching the sunset and some little fuzzy picture like that, right? Well, here's the rub, folks, it's not good enough. It ain't going to get you there. But if you do goal setting in a proper way, then you will achieve amazing things. I do this to other people because Sam did it to me and it just gave me goosebumps. Did a goal setting session with Sam and we came out with 9 short-term goals, 9 one-year goals. And at the time I was doing them, I was trying to work out whether really whether Sam stuff was going to work for me or not. So I set these quite ambitious goals inside 12 months. And Sam said to me, if in 12 months' time you've achieved those goals, how will you feel? And I said, well, it would be unfriggin' believable, to be honest, because I reckon about one of them is achievable. But anyway, he taught me some stuff, came back in a year's time, and I'd achieved 7 of the 9. And he replayed the conversation to me, and it just sent goosebumps down my neck. And I just have done that year on year ever since, you know? I mean, when I first met Sam, I was an employee in a multinational, earning good money, and didn't really want to do much other than that. Why? Because I was very comfortable, and that's a danger, right? It's like, you know, personal leadership, being all that you can be, requires you to go out and stretch your boundaries. Personal growth is when you go to the edge of your comfort zone and you push beyond it, and it's where you'll make mistakes, but you grow in that space, and then ultimately your boundaries will expand. In the absence of doing nothing, those boundaries will contract. Here's a truth. At any given moment, you are growing or you are dying. There's no such thing as sitting still. Now, the older you get, the faster the contraction happens. We all see it in our parents, right? As they get older, suddenly they don't want to travel overseas, and then they don't want to travel domestically, and then they don't want to drive the car, and then they don't want to leave the house and all that sort of stuff. Most of them are still capable, but their boundaries contract and contract and contract. That's just a reality. In the absence of pushing out, they are slowly contracting, whether you know it or not. And so personal growth requires some energy and some effort. You can't get fit lying inside your comfort cave. You can't grow when you lie inside your comfort cave. Sure, it's warm and fuzzy and a nice place to sit, but ultimately things change. And if you don't get out and stretch and grow, then ultimately the boundaries of the comfort cave will contract. And so that's what a lot of personal growth is about. And that's what we would actually try and teach people to do. And that's what written goals are about. You have to do some things to achieve them. And teaching people how to achieve those things means you will make mistakes along the way. But that's okay. I always think it's remarkable and quite lucky that we learn to grow up when we're kids, because kids have a wonderful attitude to mistakes. They just keep trying and trying and trying again. How many times do you fall over when you're learning to walk, you know, with your young ones? And they must fall over dozens, if not hundreds of times. If we somehow got beamed onto earth as adults and we hadn't learned to walk, you know, I reckon I know people who would try it, and if they, after 10 times, go, walking's not for me, I've tried 10 times now and I can't crack it, you know, and they'd fold their arm, you know, I'm just going to sit here. And I see people do that with all sorts of things, right? Because they somehow think that making mistake is a failure, as opposed to making mistake as a growing experience and a learning experience. So we have these lenses on our eyes and on our mind that come in as adults, and it's all driven by a whole bunch of stuff. That's part of the conditioning. It's also part of the basis of which every human being does something. You know, you look at all the psychoanalysis and all the psychiatrists agree that the cause of any human behaviour is driven by 2 things. One is to gain pleasure, or the other is to avoid pain. And that's that's one of the realities, so you can work with that if you want to accept that. And for a lot of people, it's to avoid pain. Fear is one of the biggest drivers that we have. You know, our fear of not being accepted, of not being fitting in, of not looking right, of not being able to provide for our family, of not being able to pay the mortgage, of not being able to do things. We're constantly driven by fear. And you have to understand and see in yourself, you know, what it is you want to do and what's driving your behaviours, so that when you understand that, you can actually change that and you can empower yourself to do amazing things. And so it's a very, you know, walking through the door of personal leadership requires some courage and it requires some effort, but it has remarkable results. And Sam mentioned sitting down at the church, because that's kind of where I was. I had the opportunity to buy the company, but actually I didn't want to do it. And it was mostly driven by fear. You know, what if I lose this? What if I fail? What if I do this? You know, unfortunately, the IT industry pays quite well. So there I was, 2 babies, nice house, all the bathrooms and cars that you could ever want. And my wife said to me, you know, you know, we don't need the aggravation, we don't need the hassle, we don't need the trouble. And then ultimately, when I did do it, it was for a completely different paradigm. I did the personal leadership course, and I realised, for me, the driver to do it was, and it was a number of things, but one of the things, it was something that my mum said, and it's my definition of personal leadership as well. I lost my mum through lung cancer. And, you know, in some ways it's a horrible disease, but in other ways you get time to sort things out. And at the time that she finally passed, the whole family were around the bed, and her last words to all of us as children were, "Be the best that you can be." And when I learned through personal leadership how to do that, the reason I bought the company wasn't fame and richness and all the other bits and pieces. It was literally the rocking chair test. I couldn't have stood the thought of sitting there on the rocking chair thinking, you know, I didn't buy the company because I was too scared to see if I could do it, because I was too comfortable, because I was afraid I might fall over and skin my knees and lose that which I had, which were just peripheral material things. And I didn't take the journey of the soul to find out what I could do or how well I could do it, because I was too frightened. And you will find those decision points in your life. You will find moments that will become moments of truth with yourself. And you have to ask yourself whether you're going to walk through that door or not. Now, my wife struggled with it because, you know, we borrowed more money than I thought the world had to buy the company, and she literally couldn't breathe for 6 months. And, you know, and we went through some tough times. We nearly lost the company 2 or 3 times, and, you know, lucky we had a really good board, and there's a whole bunch of stuff around that. But ultimately, the journey was a journey of personal leadership. And it wasn't about, you know, fame or richness or more comfort around you. Actually, it was just a journey, and that's the journey that we took, and that's the journey that the personal leadership courses taught me to take as well. And that's the journey that is just so empowering when you teach both yourself and your staff that as well. So that's quite extraordinary. And then the last part, the C, so that's the B, about alignment. You've got to teach people, set goals. You've got to do it for your personal life. You've got to do it for your team ultimately. You know, don't go out and, you know, boil the ocean in a single day. It took a long time to cascade this down, and we would teach people, you know, how to set goals. And it took a long time for people to master the skill sets. You know, and I know some people were sitting here and thinking, oh yeah, I learnt that stuff ages ago. You know, I was with CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies, and I was talking to them about some of this stuff, and they say, oh, I know how to set goals. And I go, oh, okay, well, let's just see. And everybody makes the same fundamental mistakes. Right? So I do challenge you thinking, if you're sitting there thinking, I know how to set goals, I do challenge you on that, because a lot of people think they do and a lot of people don't do it properly. And the reason they don't do it properly is the reason they don't get a lot of results as well. You know, it's like habits. Here's another thing that I learnt from Sam. You know, a lot of people try and change habits through just willpower. You know, cold turkey, let's just give it a go. I'm going to give up smoking, or I'm going to give up drinking, or I'm going to give up this. Just cold turkey, the Kiwi way, boom, sheer willpower. Well, the success rate on that is around 30%. There's a methodology around how to give up habits. There's 5 discrete steps. You do those 5 discrete steps, the success rate goes from 30% to between 70 and 80%. Again, this knowledge is there. It's easy. How many habits would you like to change? How many habits will you change? And yet it's up to people to actually do something, get off the couch and take some actions to make that happen. It doesn't come over the radios, and it doesn't come from your dinner parties. So here's a moment of truth with yourself. How much do I want to change? How much do I want to find out what my potential is? And how much do I want to invest in unlocking that potential? So there's a moment of truth everybody in this room has. Everybody on the planet has. I'm just here to talk about it because I've asked myself that many times. I took what I thought was a silly punt, but it turned out to be something extraordinary, and it changed my life dramatically. And I'm just sharing the fact that it worked for me, and I'm assuming that it works for others, because I know plenty of people it has. So the C is your attitude along the way. Between you and any goal is a whole series of obstacles. So we actually changed a whole bunch of things in Rivera. We changed, values. We spent a long time talking about values. I know people get a little bit confused on values, but values, I'm just a simpleton. Values are just simply the things that you value. All right? So, and the corollary is if they're not there, then you don't value them. So you have them at home, you have them in flats, you have them in any sports club you have. My kids can't come home from school, pop their school bag off, light a beer, feed on the couch, smoke a cigarette, turn on the TV, right? It's just not behaviours that we tolerate. I find it really strange when you go into a work environment, people don't talk about the behaviours they do and don't tolerate. We start to talk about work stuff. We don't talk about behaviours that are acceptable and the things that make the team, and the changing the culture. And so, I just found it extraordinary. So we defined our values and we defined what they were and we got everyone to buy into them and we gave them simple definitions, and it's not about being politically correct and tree hugging. I came up to somebody who says, I don't have time for that politically correct tree hugging stuff. I'm out there to make a bottom line. And I said, well, actually, that's just fair, right? It's a lot harder to set up these values and walk a values-based culture than it is not to. Where accountability and honesty and ownership and integrity and all of these things are real. And make them real. Every single thing that was done well inside Rivera was related to our values. Everything that was done poorly was related to our values. And we had monthly and quarterly and goals. We had a cultural plan. One of the greatest assets a company has is its culture. Because culture is the glass ceiling on the collective heads. And if you shatter and unlock the real culture in an organisation, that's when you really get things going. And that's what we did inside Rivera. When we bought the company, we were at the bottom of the best places to work survey. It was as low as you could go. It was just a caustic, multinational, dog-eat-dog, tell lies on everyone else type environment. And when we bought the company, we didn't know we were going to be successful or not, so we decided to transform the culture. And within 12 months, we went from the bottom of the best places to work survey to the top. And it was the same computers, same staff, same phones, same desks, suppliers, customers, same everything. All we changed was the culture. And in that first 12 months, revenue went up 40% and profit went up 100%. And the company grew year on year at 20% per annum, sometimes more, every year since then, literally by changing the culture. Rivera was not about computers and data centres, it was about people and unlocking people inside the organisation. And I am absolutely convinced that's the same for everybody as well. So we had this whole thing about being positive. We almost had this invisible banner when we hired people which says, miserable people go away and work for the opposition, and, happy people only sort of come and work here. But we put a lot of effort into that. We would have workshops regularly around what does culture mean, what does owning your attitude mean. We wanted an environment, and I challenge people because, in human life, when you come across an issue, you've got three responses. And this applies to everybody and every issue. You can ignore it, and, we know what happens to that when we have an issue in our personal life and we ignore it, and then, 9 months, a year later, it just blows up on you like a neutron bomb. And that's what happens at work as well. You can walk away from it, which is the average Kiwi response, right? You go to a place and you get poor service, and what do? You leave and you tell all your mates about how bad it was, right? We walk away from it. Or you can fix it. Now again, a lot of people think, yeah, that's me, I'm the one who fixes it. Well, the reality is, folks, that a lot of people don't do that. Because a lot of times inside an organisation, when someone has an issue with a person, they'll take it to, their cubicle mate or their best friend or the receptionist or Gossip Central or the kitchen or the pub after work or whatever. And they generally take it to everybody except the person they've got the issue with. Why? Because a lot of us don't have the confidence or feel we aren't diplomatic enough to go and have that conversation with that person. And yet, if you do that, if you take that issue to the source and solve it at source, that relationship grows rather than weakens. And that's what I find extraordinary. We shy away from the very thing that makes the relationship stronger. And so in Rivera, we made that easy to do by introducing a simple thing called the Rock. And the Rock allowed our team to have a meeting with somebody. If I had an issue with Sam, I'd ask Sam for a Rock meeting. And the Rock was like saying, I may not say this in the best possible way. Don't take offence if I get it wrong, but I need to tell you something because I'm having an issue with it or it's really pissing me off. and they would get it off their chest, and between the two of them, usually it was a transmit-receive error with communication, which is the source of 80% of problems, and we would solve it. And so suddenly, the whole company became a source of solving their own problems. Anytime someone came to me, and I said to them, you know, have you had a rock meeting with that person? Because here's another thing. In New Zealand, a lot of managers enjoy being what I call an agony aunt. And they enjoy people coming to them with a problem, and I will solve your problem. And you just become a sucker for everybody bringing you all these issues, and then you spend your whole day solving those issues, and you've actually achieved nothing other than put out a whole lot of fires that could have been put out by themselves. There's the rub. And we know it when we're bringing up our kids. You know, there's a point in time when your kids are trying to do something, and you think, if I do it myself, it's quicker and easier, or I can invest in the time to teach them how to do it, and then I don't have to do it again. That's the same with your team around you. That's the same with your staff. And a lot of New Zealand managers love being agony aunts because that's how they feel appreciated, that's how they feel valuable, that's how they justify themselves. But you're not making the boat go faster. You're not teaching your people around you to grow. You're not being a leader, you're being a manager. And I find that extraordinary that too many people do that. So we did a whole bunch of stuff around the attitude, and then ultimately it worked. We remained towards the top of the best places to work survey for many, many years, and still hovers around there as well. And so I'll finish there and go into questions and see where you folk want to take this. But the reality is that we transformed the business through transforming the people. To transform the people, you've got to go on some personal journeys. You can't just do it from the outside in. It's got to be from the inside out. All the answers we seek lie within ourselves. All the hurdles we have in front of us lie within ourselves. And yet as humans, we're not given the tools to unlock some of those things. And I just find that extraordinary. And I just think that any investment you make should be, a percentage should be, on investing in yourself. Because the leader of an organisation, one of the things that I do as a chairman is I mentor the chairs a lot, right? If you can unlock the glass ceiling in the leader of an organisation, that allows the organisation to fly. Often the glass ceiling is in the person at the top. And the person at the top is often the last person to invest in themselves, because they see all these problems around them and they think they have to invest in everyone else around them as well. And I find that a little bit extraordinary as well. So there is an awful lot that can transform it. You know, I mean, it's reasonably public. We bought the company in 2002 for about 4 million. We sold it, you know, this year for just under 100. But along the way, we applied a lot of the programs, a lot of the learning, a lot of the development. It was around the people. We couldn't buy any faster the computers than anyone else had. We had smaller pockets than all our competition. We were tiny compared to our other competition. Most of our competition were over $1 billion in revenue. We were around 50 million in revenue. We were tiny. We didn't have the resources that they had to hire smart people, to hire better computers, to hire better data centers, to do all this. So we had to change the game, and we did. And we changed the game around culture and relationships. Relationships with our customers and relationships with each other. And that's where it all started. So I'll probably leave it at that, is that the ABC, get the most out of your business by getting the most out of your people, align the people, and have the right attitude and the right culture along the way. And for me, that is the formula for a successful business. So on that note, Sam, I'll just pause and see if we have any questions. Thank you.
I have a general question. How do you avoid that trap that every business owner gets into by working in the business, not on the business? Because that's a big pitfall, really. A lot of people get consumed in having to do the client work, having to make sure their staff are able to do things. But how do you actually break that barrier and go, right, I know that my staff can do it. I know that people can survive without me. It's not just me. I have a team behind me, but I want to work on my business where my passion is. How do you change that mindset? Because that's a big thing for business owners. That's why it doesn't succeed a lot.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, actually, and it's very easy to become a victim in it. And I've talked to a lot of people and they say, there's just not enough hours in the day for me to ever get on the front foot. I'm just in reactive mode the whole time and I can never get out of it. And so, and the key to the answer there was what you said, right? So it's an attitude. That's a victim attitude, right? I am totally responsible because of all these outside environments. So I always challenge people. I can find an hour a day in anyone's diary, easy, right? Just by changing some things that we accept as a rule, and for some reason, I don't know why we accept those. And the answer is a little bit at a time. You know, so 4-quadrant, you know, in terms of what's urgent and non-urgent and important and non-important. And so a lot of people spend all their time in the, just about everything in life could be done one of these Boston matrices, but that's important, and that's not important, and that's urgent, and that's non-urgent. And here's where firefighting occurs. You know, it's urgent and it's important, and the only reason it's become urgent because it wasn't dealt with earlier on, right? But this is called quadrant 2, where it's actually down here. It's non-urgent but important, and that's quadrant 2, and that's where you should spend more time, but that's where firefighters spend all their time. And you start off by getting a little bit of time to invest down here, and then slowly, the more time you invest down here, the less fires are created into the future, right? So there's no instant, I can solve this for you next week, but you've just got to create some time to get into some important items that are non-urgent. Over here is the playpen, you know, where it's not important and it's not urgent, and a lot of people spend a lot of time here. And you've got to be brutal on yourself, right? You literally got to do some time analysis and be brutal on yourself, because this is where a lot of people, you know, these are the stuff that we like to do. You know, this is the sand and the water in the jar and all that sort of carry on as well. But you've got to force yourself to initially spend as much time in quadrant 2 as you can. To save time in people's day, you know, I mean, what do I do with most people? I mean, this is an office environment, but, you know, I always say to people, why is it that when you ring up and ask people for a meeting, it defaults to an hour? And why is it you say yes to every meeting? Right? I don't know why. I mean, some programmer in Seattle and Microsoft put the default for an hour in Outlook, and suddenly we've all just accepted that. It's just garbage, right? So make every meeting half an hour. It's like a garage. No matter how big it is, it'll always be filled with junk. A meeting is exactly the same thing. You can achieve as much in 30 minutes if you've got a chair and an agenda than you can in an hour. And just force people to do that, right? I refuse to go to meetings if there isn't a chair and agenda. I say no. Send me who's going to chair it and send me the agenda, and then I might consider going to the meeting, right? And do it in 30 minutes. So I don't know how many meetings a day you have on average, but if you save 30 minutes times, you know, the number of meetings a day, then usually there's time. Why do we travel to work in peak hours? With technology the way it is, it's just dumb, right? I don't know why we do that, right? So how much time do you spend commuting, and find ways of making your commute an advantage, not a disadvantage? How many people in the room file emails? Put your hand up if you file emails. Right, when you read an email. Right? Now it's amazing. So here's the thing. Why do we file? Because that's what we did with paper. You file stuff to find it. But it's amazing. I call this walking into the future facing backwards. And this will sound brutal because I want to provoke you to change. But literally, in a digital world, we copy what we did in a paper world. We just do it digitally. That's just kind of dumb. You're not taking advantage of digitally. You can find an email much faster with any search engine. Right? I mean, on Apple, they come automatically. A long time since I worked with Microsoft, but you used to be able to buy a search engine for a $10 add-on, and it will find an email on any subject, any person, whatever, so fast. Time and motion studies that you can spend as much time filing emails as you do reading them. Right? So for those people that are swamped with emails, just read it and either put it in the to-do thing or drop it to the floor. And then if you need to find it again, the search engine will find it. You know, people ring me up. You know, this is John Kelly, I want to talk to you about something, so I just type in John Kelly, boom, every piece of correspondence I've ever had with John Kelly came up. Right? We don't take advantage of, you know, what digital offers us as well. So you've got to take a brutal look at yourself about where your time goes, do some time studies, right, and work out how much of your time is taken by time bandits, how much of your time is not achieving what you want to achieve, and it's taken in some of these other quadrants. Squeeze out an hour in a day to be more proactive, and then slowly but surely that will change. Yes, some jobs will have reactive time that's 60, 70, 80%, and ultimately at 100%. Maybe you just have to do extra hours to find that time. But the more time you start spending here, the less fires that start here. And when they don't have to do firefighting all the time because the fires are no longer starting. So it's a slowly that makes it work. But it's just well worth it. Otherwise, you'll never break free. You know, you've got to find time to spend with yourself, and you've got to find time to plan for your business. And you've got to, you know, a lot of people call it delegating. You've got to allow others to grow. And just think of it as you would raise your children, because denying people the chance to grow because you're scared they're going to screw up is denying them of their leadership or the chance to grow as well. So you've got to work out, you know, I have a saying, above and below the waterline, right? So think of it being on a boat. If they make a mistake, will the hole in the side of the boat be above or below the waterline? Massive difference either side, right? So if it's below the waterline, yeah, you know, you've really got to put your hands on it. But if it's above the waterline, who cares? Let them make a mistake and let them grow, because ultimately, next time they'll do it and do it right. So, I mean, these are quite courageous things as well, you know. It's like the guy that lost the biggest job for IBM. It was a $40 billion job, and it was for an IRS job somewhere, and he led the proposal, and he was supposed to bring it in, and it cost $10 million to bring this in, and he missed out. And he walked in and he put his resignation on the table, and he said, I know you're going to fire me, so I resign first. And the guy said, no, I'm not. He says, you've just learnt the most expensive lesson. Why would I let you go? Because I know next time you'll win it. And there's a lot to that, right? So, in rugby, with the benefit of hindsight, but, Graham Henry, he lost one World Cup, and the typical reaction is to shoot him, and we'll bring in someone who's never won one either. No, the lessons he learnt in losing that World Cup allowed him to win the next one, and it's quite extraordinary what the common reaction is and what a more thoughtful reaction should be as well. So you've got to be able to create time to spend thinking and get proactive on that as well. It's not easy, I'll grant you, it's not easy, right? But if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? So that's the opportunity. Yeah, very good question.